At 7:30 in the morning on October 24, 1944, Technical Sergeant Charles Culage lay crouched beneath the dripping pines of the Vosges forest, east of a small French village most Americans had never heard of. Cold rain slid from needle to needle and soaked into his jacket as he stared into a gray wall of fog where German soldiers waited, unseen but close. He was 23 years old and had been in combat for 14 straight months. Salerno, Anzio, San Pietro, the Rapido River, Monte Cassino, Rome. He had survived battles that destroyed entire units and scarred the reputation of generals. Men who went into those fights with him never came back. Culage did. The 36th Infantry Division had paid for every mile of Italy in blood. At the Rapido River in January, they had tried to cross under direct German fire. In less than 2 days, nearly 2,000 Americans were killed, wounded, or captured. Rifle companies vanished. Congressional hearings followed. Officers argued. Careers ended. Culage kept moving forward. Now the division was in France, having landed in the south in August and pushed north through the Rhône Valley until the war funneled them into the Vosges Mountains. The terrain was a defender's dream. Steep ridges, dense forests, freezing rain, and German troops who had turned every hilltop into a fortress. Culage commanded a section of heavy machine guns, water-cooled .30 caliber Brownings. Properly placed, they could stop an infantry assault cold. His orders were simple on paper. Cover the right flank of 3rd Battalion near Hill 623. The problem wasn't the mission. It was the men. Of the 12 soldiers under his command that morning, most had arrived within the last 2 weeks. They had crossed the Atlantic, filled empty slots left by dead or wounded men, and been pushed straight into the line. None of them had ever been shot at before. There was no officer on Hill 623. No lieutenant. No captain. The senior American on that ground was a technical sergeant from Signal Mountain, Tennessee, a man who had worked in his family's printing business before the war and never asked for a promotion beyond sergeant. In the Vosges, companies meant to field 180 men were operating with 70. Platoons of 40 fought with 15. Replacements came as fast as ships could deliver them, and most became casualties within days. The Germans knew these mountains. Every clearing was registered by mortars. Every approach was covered by machine guns. Advance blindly, and men died. Culage knew that. He had earned a Silver Star in Italy. He knew what happened when inexperienced troops panicked. So that morning, before placing his guns, he took a sergeant from Company K and moved forward to scout. They needed to see the ground. They needed to understand what they were facing. What they found was worse than anything he had expected. Moving through fog and rain, they walked straight into a German infantry company. Not a patrol. Not an outpost. An entire company, around 150 men, dug into prepared positions with overlapping fields of fire. The Germans saw them instantly. Culage had seconds to choose. Run. Surrender. Or do something no manual had ever prepared him for. He stood up, carbine in hand, and demanded that the entire German company surrender to him. The Germans raised their weapons. Culage fired first, dropping 2 men before the forest exploded with gunfire. Rifles, machine pistols, and MG-42 tearing the air like ripping canvas. Culage and the Company K sergeant sprinted back through snapping branches and exploding bark as German infantry surged forward, trying to crush the Americans before they could organize. When Culage reached his position, his stomach sank. The replacements had frozen. Some stared at one another, waiting for orders. Others instinctively edged backward, pulled by the ancient urge to run. They had trained for this. None of that training prepared them for bullets close enough to hear. Culage didn't shout. He didn't run. He walked. He moved down the line, calm and steady, pointing to positions, adjusting fields of fire, placing riflemen to protect the guns. German fire intensified. Mortars fell somewhere to the left. He kept walking. The Brownings were his advantage. They could fire for hours without overheating. If the crews stayed on the guns, if they trusted him, they could stop this. The first German assault came like a gray tide through the trees. Culage gave the command. The Brownings opened up. German soldiers fell. Others dove for cover. The assault died 20 yards short of the line. 15 minutes later, they tried again from a different angle. Same result. By midday, 4 assaults had been beaten back. German bodies lay scattered in the forest, but Culage understood the math. The enemy still outnumbered him 10-1. They would not stop. Night came cold and wet. His men had survived their first day of combat without a single American casualty, but the Germans were still out there. The night passed in frozen silence, broken by probing attacks that were beaten back with short, brutal bursts. No one slept. Rain turned to sleet and back again. Culage moved between positions, checking ammunition, whispering encouragement to men discovering that war was mostly waiting, waiting in the cold, waiting in the dark, waiting for something terrible. Dawn on October 25th brought thick fog, and the Germans used it. Gray shapes appeared almost inside grenade range before the guns opened up. The attack collapsed in minutes. Another followed from a different direction. Germans slipped through a seam, and fighting turned into chaos at arm's length. Culage ran toward the breach, killed 1 German, wounded another, and sealed the gap. The attacks kept coming. 8 in total by nightfall. Ammunition ran low. 2 men were wounded but stayed on the line. Culage had no radio. Battalion headquarters had no idea if Hill 623 still existed. By the morning of October 26th, the Germans changed tactics. Mortars walked across the hilltop, air bursts shredding branches and spraying fragments into foxholes. Then infantry came again, reinforced, better coordinated. 1 Browning jammed under fire. Culage sprinted to it and cleared the belt himself. The assault stalled, but each attack pushed closer. Then, suddenly, the forest went quiet. Culage recognized the silence. He had seen it before. Scouts confirmed it, tracked vehicles moving in the German rear. Tanks were coming. He had 1 bazooka and 3 rockets. Dawn on October 27th broke with thinner fog. Culage saw the bodies from the last 3 days and heard the engines before he saw the armor. 2 tanks pushed through the trees. Infantry followed, confident now. At 60 yards, the lead tank stopped. A German officer stood up and demanded surrender in fluent English. Culage stood and refused. The tanks advanced. Culage picked up the bazooka and walked forward. Not ran. Walked. At 25 yards, he knelt and fired. Click. The bazooka failed. He threw it aside, gathered every grenade he had, and crawled forward under machine gun fire. He threw grenades into the infantry, tearing the assault apart. Behind him, the Brownings cut down exposed Germans. The coordinated attack dissolved into chaos. But courage couldn't replace ammunition. When the grenades were gone and the guns fell silent, Culage ordered an organized withdrawal. He was the last man off the hill. The Germans did not pursue. 12 men had held Hill 623 for 4 days against overwhelming force. Not 1 American was killed. Word spread fast. The Medal of Honor followed months later, but Culage stayed a sergeant, finished the war, and went home to Tennessee. He returned to printing, raised a family, and lived quietly for decades. Charles Culage never called himself a hero. He said he just took care of his men. He died in 2021 at 99 years old, one of the last living links to a war where ordinary men were asked to do impossible things, and did them anyway. If stories like this matter to you, hit like, subscribe, and help keep them alive. These men didn't ask to be remembered, but they deserve to be.